through that list, Marisol. And
Sure.
then by that time, we should be able to begin the first presentation. So that the first presentation is the Mitchell-Lama presentation. If those folks would be ready to begin their presentation right after the roll call. And then following the Mitchell-Lama presentation will be the budget adoption, and in that order, which is the voting item. So we should be ready for the voting item. All those who are on the borough board, our representatives and chairs are should participate in the vote for that. That will also be a roll call vote. So we need you to, keep an ear out for that to come up second as the second presentation. So we have another item after that, and then, the regular announcements, but that's really what's going to happen. That's a quick overview. And I'm ready to go live.
Okay, yeah, we're good to go.
Are you telling me that was live?
It was.
Wow, thank goodness. I'm always ready to be sharing this meeting. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Always welcome to our monthly borough board meeting. It's a pleasure to be with everyone, and of course have our independent adult time together. So pursuant to Chapter 4, Section 85, and Chapter 69, Section 2706 of the New York City Charter, a joint meeting of the Bronx Borough Service Cabinet and Bronx Borough Board will take place on Thursday, February 25th, 2021, starting at 10 a.m. roughly via our virtual conferencing Zoom today. So again, thank you to everyone for coming. I will be doing a roll call. I'm just going to call each community board and representative as we move ahead. So of course, we're going to start with Community Board 1, and everyone can just in anticipation, unmute yourself. It's in numeric order. Community Board 1. I see someone speaking, but I don't hear anything. So
yeah, just as a reminder, if you're using WebEx software, you can hit the mute or unmute button down using the buttons at the bottom of the screen. And again, on a phone, *6 unmutes.
okay, so
Cedric, I'm sorry.
Board, we'll come back to if need be. Community Board 2.
Hi, good morning, Ralph Acevedo, District Manager.
Morning, Treasurer.
Paula Fields.
Treasurer.
Paula Fields Conyers is the treasurer. Yes. The call.
Okay, I didn't hear any of that, so I'm gonna have to just say it now. Everyone, mute yourself, please. Everyone who's not me, please mute yourself, and then just before I say your community board, unmute. So let's go back. Community Board 2.
Morning, Ralph Acevedo, District Manager.
Okay.
Good morning, Paula Fields Conyers, Treasurer, Community Board 2.
Okay, awesome. That worked out. Okay, Community Board 3.
Good morning, Madam Chair. John Dudley, District Manager, Community Board number 3. Reverend Rivera asked to be excused today. He's not going to be able to make it, so.
Okay.
Okay.
Community Board 4.
Robert Garmendez, Community Board 4 Chair. Morning, everybody.
Good morning. Community Board 5.
Sorry, you caught me in mid-typing. Good morning, this is Ken Brown, District Manager of Community Board 5.
Awesome. Community Board 6.
Good morning, Carla Leon.
Good morning, Yvonne Capers, Chair.
Okay, we have Chair and Carla Leon.
Yeah, Community Associate.
Okay, great. Thank you. Community Board 7.
Hello, everyone. This is Emmanuel, Chair, Community Board 7.
Very good. Thank you. Community Board 8.
Good morning, Laura Spalter, Chair, Community Board 8.
Thank you. Also, Community Board 9.
Sorry, hi, this is Kira, District Manager, Community Board 8. Good morning.
Good morning. Community Board, what was I up to? 9, 10. Community Board.
9, Madam Deputy. Good
Hi.
morning. This is Shirley San Andres Alonso, Assistant District Manager, Community Board 9.
Very good. Thank you. I'm glad to see you. Community Board 10.
Denise Noble, First Vice Chair, Community Board 10. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning. Community Board 11.
Jeremy Warnke.
Good morning, Jeremy. How are you?
Morning.
Community. Excellent. Community Board 12.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. This is Dr. Michael Burke, Chairman of Community Board 12. And good morning, colleagues.
Good morning. This is George from Community Board 12.
Good morning, George. And I thought I saw our Councilwoman Oyella on the line.
No, this is Gloria Cruz, her representative.
Oh, well, that's good too. Thank you.
Thank you.
A community, where am I at? Councilmember Riley. Okay. And Councilmember Joing. Councilmember Cabrera.
Greg Faulkner, representing Councilman Cabrera's office.
Thank you. Councilmember Gibson.
Rachel Prasad, representing Councilmember Vanessa Gibson's office. Good morning, everyone.
Hi, good morning. Councilmember Salamanca.
Good morning, everyone. This is Shannon Knox, representing Councilmember Salamanca.
Thank you. And Councilmember Diaz Sr. Okay, very good. Our first presentation is going to be on the Mitchell-Lama preservation and restoration of the Mitchell-Lama program. Because I don't have it in front of me for some technical reason, it's not coming up. I'll just wing it, so to speak. And I'll ask that the folks who are presenting today, please introduce yourselves, as well as, your presentation. Start your presentation whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Warren Harding, and I chair the steering committee of Mitchell-Lama United, which is a group of 12 very hardworking people that really collaborated to get this presentation together. So if you give me a moment, I'm going to share my screen so you can see our presentation. Okay. All right, so can everyone see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, great. So let me just put it in slideshow mode. Okay. Hang on a second. Let me just. Oh, sorry. Let me do one last thing before we start. Hold on. Camera off if I can. Oh, it's okay. We'll get started. Okay, once again, good morning, and I thank you for giving us the opportunity to speak to you and the Borough Board today. Mitchell-Lama United is a partnership of three Mitchell-Lama advocacy groups: the Brooklyn Mitchell-Lama Task Force, Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama, and the Mitchell-Lama Residents Coalition. While each organization exists independently, we formed this coalition back in February of last year as an umbrella organization advocating to preserve and protect Mitchell-Lama developments for both co-ops and rentals. And as a means for that advocacy, we're seeking to build support for an agenda based on organizing legislative initiatives, impeding privatization, and good governance. We also have a Gmail account, as you see at the bottom of this screen, for anyone who wishes to contact us via email, which is mitchellamaunited@gmail.com. Now, for today's presentation, we'll be covering these topics, talking about the importance of Mitchell-Lama, how it works, our proposed state legislation, and threats to the Mitchell-Lama program, and how preserving and expanding the Mitchell-Lama program advances the Affirmatively Furthering fair housing efforts that are underway in New York City through the Where We Live New York program. So right now I'm going to hand things over to Dick Heitler, who's another member of our steering committee, to discuss the first three topics of this presentation. So Dick, it's all yours.
Thank you, Warren. And nice to see you all. We like to base our presentations in reality, so we're starting with a real document here. This, as you will immediately recognize, is an advertisement opening the waiting list at Rosalie Manning, a Mitchell-Lama co-op on 88th Street in Manhattan. We like to use this because it's relatively recent, but also because Rosalie Manning has a great story. There was a knockdown, drag-out privatization attempt. A group called Pro-Mitchell-Lama Advocates formed Keep Our Building Affordable, called COBA, beat privatization, and then got themselves elected to the board and have since taken over the board. And it's a great story, and the information on this waiting list advocation illustrates why Mitchell-Lama is so important to the city of New York. It produces the most affordable housing available to the city's workforce. If you couldn't read the print on the slide, here it is. This is a comparison of monthly charges at Rosalie Manning versus what used to be workforce housing at Stuyvesant Town and has since converted to luxury housing. And as you can see, Rosalie Manning is considerably less expensive. Like, you know, Stuyvesant Town is in many cases more than 5 times more expensive than Rosalie Manning. It's easy to see that Rosalie Manning is a better deal. And the next slide deals with how the Mitchell-Lama program actually achieves these terrific results. Now, we have a whole presentation that we do. It's another slideshow called What's So Great About Mitchell-Lama, where we take a half an hour to explain this in detail. This is the short version, and it's just a list. And again, if I'm going to go through it quickly, if you have questions about any of it, you can ask a question in the Q&A. But very, very briefly, what this slide tells you is that there's a lot of things that government has done to keep Mitchell-Lama affordable. Most Mitchell-Lama co-ops got their land very, very cheaply from the government. Government issues mortgages and loans at very favorable interest rates. The big one is the abatement of regular real estate taxes. Mitchell-Lama co-ops and rentals pay what's called a shelter rent tax calculation, which reduces the tax bite by as much as 80%. They also have access to low-cost loans for major repairs. And if you moved into a Mitchell-Lama and you were income eligible, but now you're doing a little bit better, you pay a surcharge. So the people who are doing a little bit better get to stay in their houses, but they make a bigger contribution to the co-op, and that makes it cheaper for everybody else. But the most important thing that keeps Mitchell-Lama co-ops particularly affordable are not-for-profit operation. This is the most important feature of this very successful program design. And not only does it keep the monthly charges low, it keeps the sales price down. This is not-for-profit operation. When you buy a Mitchell-Lama co-op, you acquire your capital at cost, essentially. And when you sell your Mitchell-Lama co-op, you get what you paid in, nothing more, nothing less. And this keeps Mitchell-Lama co-ops affordable to future generations. There are threats to this beautiful program, and the principal among these threats is privatization. This means the co-op leaves the program and becomes a market rate co-op and gets very much more expensive. There's also this idea of, Warren, go to slide 8, please. There you go. There's also the threat of conversions from Article 2 to Article 11. I can talk more about this if you like. Article 2 is the Mitchell-Lama section of the private housing finance law. Article 11 is the HDFC, Housing Development Fund Company section. This converts the co-op from a not-for-profit co-op to a limited profit co-op. It's still not market rate, but it's not close to affordable. Also, when a rental Mitchell-Lama goes private, those residents face higher rents and the loss of benefits for rental tenants like SCREE and DREE. Other kinds of threats to the Mitchell-Lama program currently is obviously the pandemic, but we have ongoing problems with board governance, sometimes board malfeasance, and these problems are not addressed because at times government oversight is ineffective. Next slide. About privatization. You're going to hear people say that Mitchell-Lama is over, all the projects are going to be bought out sooner or later, but that's not exactly true. What this slide shows you is that while almost two-thirds of the rentals have indeed been lost, less than 10% of the co-ops have gone private. And there are reasons for that, which we'd be happy to discuss with you. Again, if you have questions, bring them up in the Q&A, but we're going to move on to the next slide. When a rental goes private, it can be a disaster. Some tenants will be eligible for rent stabilization, but many will not. And even those that are subject to rent stabilization will be subject to much higher rent increases than would have been the case had they stayed Mitchell-Lama. They can also get rent increases like any other rent stabilized tenant through major capital improvements. Tenants also lose the ability to move within the development. If you're in a Mitchell-Lama and you need a bigger apartment, you get on the internal waiting list and you move, and it doesn't cost you anything. Tenants in a private building who want to move will probably not be offered another rent stabilized apartment. They'll be offered a bigger apartment, but it'll likely be market rate. And of course, for those tenants who move into buildings that are not protected by rent stabilization, they will lose all rent, not only all their rent protections, but also SCREE and DREE. Next slide, please. I like this slide because it gives me a chance to tell you that we are winning way more battles than we lose. This is the CU4ML is one of the constituent groups of Mitchell-Lama United, Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama, and we oppose privatization by working with organized tenant groups in Mitchell-Lama co-ops considering privatization, and we provide information and technical assistance and organizing assistance. In all of these battles, the privateers really had gained control of the board and had used, or in our view, misused funds, but in spite of being outspent and outgunned, we are mostly winning the good fight. In many cases, as in with Rosalie Manning, not only did we beat back privatization, but we've since taken over the board, and the result are co-ops that are firmly committed to the Mitchell-Lama program and the preservation of long-term affordability. But we do have losses. The next slide. We lost Southbridge by a handful of votes. Southbridge went private a little over 5 years ago, and now the financial stress is intense. Only a month ago, they announced that their budget has a $7 million shortfall, and to close the gap, the board has imposed an operating assessment, which works out to about $4,000 per apartment that has to be paid in over a 5-month period. That will raise the average resident's monthly cost by about $800 a month, and it's not over. That closes the fiscal 21 gap. For fiscal 22, the Southbridge treasurer estimates that they will need a 40% maintenance increase to close the gap next year. How did this happen? It's a very long story. I'm going to try to explain it to you briefly in the next 2 slides. But again, if you have questions, we do have a Q&A. Next slide. Everybody concedes that when a Mitchell-Lama goes private, they lose the tax break and taxes will go up. At Southbridge, taxes went up from about 1.6 million a year as a Mitchell-Lama. By the way, Southbridge is a big co-op. It's about 650 units. In its first year of privatization, it went up to 8.3 million. So that's like about a 7-fold increase. And then over the following 5 years, taxes doubled again from 8.3 to more than 16.5 million. In the meantime, as taxes went up, revenue from flip taxes, which was supposed to, the basic theory of privatization is that by taking a flip, when a shareholder sells an apartment at market rate, the co-op takes a piece of the profit. That can be anywhere from 28 to 40%. And they use that piece of the profit to plug the gap in the budget that's created by the tax increase. And what this graph showed is that this worked for a while until it didn't, because taxes rose and flip tax income decreased. Okay, and the next slide, will show you how this plays out in terms of the total operating budget, considering total income and expenses. And you can see Southbridge went into deficit in its fourth year of privatization. It's actually 3.5 years. And they had a good year in 2019, and they're back in deficit again last year of 3.4 million. And as I already told you, the current deficit in 2021 is estimated at 7 million. This is not only a problem because, they have to fill the budget gap with maintenance increases and operating assessments. It also means that banks will decline to write mortgages for buyers. Banks, I can explain why this is so, again, in the Q&A if people are interested. It's not that complicated, but basically, if you have a persistent operating deficit of more than 5% a year for a number of years, banks will not write mortgages for your buyers because, among other things, they can't sell them on the secondary market to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, or even HUD. So if banks won't write mortgages, then no sales will take place. Sales will either decline or prices will diminish or sales will stop completely. And at that point, the whole house of cards collapses. We're sorry that we lost this one. We're glad that we won as many of these battles as we did win in order to prevent this from happening to 14 other co-ops. But the point is, we shouldn't have to continuously fight this issue one co-op at a time. There is a better and more comprehensive solution available through legislative reform. The reforms we are proposing will go a long way towards restoring Mitchell-Lama to the original vision of its creation in 1955. And to tell you that story, I'm going to turn it back to Warren.
Okay, thank you very much, Dick. So as we were saying, one of our Mitchell-Lama United's accomplishments was the development of a white paper called Legislative and Policy Recommendations for Mitchell-Lama Housing, which describes the organization, the Mitchell-Lama program, including both co-ops and rentals, and provides justifications and recommendations for preserving the program. And among those recommendations are legislative in nature and have resulted in some written bills focusing on impeding the privatization process so that it becomes exceedingly difficult to reconstitute, and also ensuring a good governance in the operation and management of our buildings. And here are some of the bills that have been drafted. And we don't have time today to review each of these, but we just want you to know that at least some of them have multiple sponsors and are being taken seriously in Albany. And further, we want to mention that a letter of support was signed by 14 members of the City Council last fall, and we're looking for additional grassroots support and hope that will be coming from you. Okay, and here we'll just take a quick look at some of these bills. The components of this bill, I just want to talk a little bit about the first component. And we're seeking to amend the law to an 80% threshold, which is consistent with what HPD requires, housing and preservation development, for the creation of an Article 11 co-op, which they also sponsor. And this bill addresses issues regarding good governance. And this bill pertains also to good governance, covering issues such as frequency of board meetings with shareholders and transparency in board member votes, which provides an opportunity for shareholders to see whether a board member's vote represents their interests, thereby meriting their vote and support in board elections. And here is another bill that also affects co-ops. And the bills on this slide are for the benefit of both co-ops and rentals. Now, in response to the COVID-19 crisis, the steering committee sent a letter to elected officials and friends of Mitchell-Lama requesting relief measures during this emergency. And one of the results of that letter was this bill that was submitted by Assembly Member Linda Rosenthal. We're waiting for a bill number. Actually, it's in the process. So that concludes the legislative portion of the presentation. So now I'll hand it back over to Dick to discuss some additional issues.
Okay. Let me catch up with you, Warren.
Okay.
I got it.
All right.
So you remember we referred to conversions from Article 2 to Article 11, essentially conversions from not-for-profit Mitchell-Lama co-ops to limited profit HDFC co-ops. This is not a legislative issue because it's not a state issue. It's not an Albany issue. It's a New York City issue. This was done by HPD through a rule change, and it can be stopped by the city council or another rule change. And I just want to explain now the reason why we object to it is because it makes Mitchell-Lamas considerably less affordable. Let's go to the next slide. The devil is in the details. The first point I want to say is, even though this program has been out there for like 4 years, not a single Mitchell-Lama co-op has yet decided to make this conversion. The information that we have, the data that we have, comes from offers that HPD and its banker, HDC, the Housing Development Corporation, have made. And that's where all these numbers come from. It's the specific underwriting that HPD and HBD have made for these kinds of conversions. And we're going to go back to Rosalie Manning as our example, since the most recent 2 to 11 conversion offer was made to Rosalie Manning. Let's go to the next slide. This is what we mean by less affordable. I hope you can all see this. The prices increase between 10 and 19 times. A 2-bedroom apartment, to take one example. If you wanted to buy in to the Mitchell-Lama version of Rosalie Manning, the shares for a 2-bedroom apartment are $45,487. Were it to become an Article 11, those same shares would be $533,000. Next slide. Now, even though the monthly maintenance would not change, the fact that somebody buying an apartment for $533,000, they probably don't have that in cash, so they'd have to get a mortgage. When you add on the cost of the mortgage, you get these figures on the monthly housing cost comparison. So while you could afford to live in Mitchell-Lama, if you could afford, if you wanted that 2-bedroom apartment in the Mitchell-Lama co-op, your monthly cost would be $1,153. Were it in Article 11, that monthly cost would jump to $3,508. That is much less affordable. And you can see that if you use the 30% affordability standard, you can see that you could afford the 2-bedroom apartment. I'm sticking with the 2-bedroom example. If you had an income of $46,120. On the other hand, the only way you could afford a 2-bedroom apartment in an Article 11 co-op at Rosalie Manning is if you had an income greater than $140,000. And this matters. What we did is we took a look. Next slide, Aaron. Warren? Warren? Are you with me? I need you to go to 28. There you go. Okay. We wanted to make this real. So we got income data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and we looked at the average salaries for the working people who actually live in Mitchell-Lamas now: social workers, teachers, nurses, also mail carriers, bus drivers, subway operators. And we compared that to the cost of a 2-bedroom apartment. Let's go to the next slide. And lo and behold, every one of these people in these vocations could afford to live in a Mitchell-Lama. That's why we use the color green to symbolize that. And they'd have money left over. But if were it to become an Article 11, they'd all be priced out. All of these electricians and firefighters and brick masons, they're all priced out. Let's go to the next one. Here's the information from the lottery again. We'll go to the next slide so I can make the point here that you could buy into you could afford to buy a co-op in Rosalie Manning with an income as little as $24,200 for a studio to a high of $148,560 for a 3-bedroom. That band of affordability, which goes from 28% of AMI to 120% of AMI, disappears when the co-op becomes an Article 11. You need much higher incomes to afford the Article 11. We also wanted to take a look at this by ethnicity, which is the next slide. And you can see that we got data on what 120 median means by ethnicity, and most ethnicities in New York could afford the Mitchell-Lama. None of them at the median level could afford the Article 11. And this is important. And the important point here is that the economics of Mitchell-Lama, what all these numbers mean, and I apologize for showing you so many numbers, but what all these numbers mean is the economics of Mitchell-Lama is what makes diversity economically possible. And Mitchell-Lamas are some of the most diverse communities in New York in terms of race, age, ethnicity, and income. And to tell you a little bit more about community and diversity, we pass the torch to Andrea.
Hello. So the figures that Dick just showed you will lead us into a discussion of fair housing. And the concept of fair housing is that everybody should be able to choose the housing that's best for their family, free from discrimination because of their gender, color, disability status, age, etc. But it's actually more than this, because there have been discriminatory practices by individual landlords, and these are certainly widespread, but also widespread has been the deliberate disinvestment in communities of color by government and industry historically through practices like redlining. And this includes things like denial of services, and for instance, which is important when you're talking about housing, mortgage financing to residents of certain neighborhoods. And these have been historically communities of color. So the Fair Housing Act was finally passed in 1968, spurred by the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And its dual purpose was to end these discriminatory housing practices, but also to reverse the residential segregation that had been brought about by all these unjust and racist government and industry practices. Part of the Fair Housing Act is something known as Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing, and I'll also call it AFFH. This is a mandate, and it was strengthened by Obama, was essentially dismantled by Trump, but is now hopefully going to be back in play. What it does is requires municipalities who receive HUD funds to demonstrate that they are actually taking successful action to undo these longstanding patterns of segregation, and that they're creating access to better housing and education and opportunity for people who've historically been denied these things. So a policy or practice is said to have a disparate impact when it has a discriminatory effect on any protected class. And protected classes are things like sex and race and disability status. And this is regardless of whether there was ever any intention by the municipality or the person who put the policy into place, whether there's any intention to discriminate. So the Mitchell-Lama housing program embodies fair housing principles, and destroying it either through privatization or pushing 2 to 11 will actually exacerbate the segregation and inequity that we already experience in New York City. Next slide, please, Warren. So as Dick showed you, the 2 to 11 policy cuts out the lower 2/3 of the Mitchell-Lama eligibility band. And because of the income disparity in New York City and in the US generally, what it therefore does is it has a disparate impact on people of color, disabled people, households headed by women, and others in protected classes. So clearly, the city and state ought to be promoting policies that do not have a disparate impact on protected classes and that actively work towards desegregation. Next slide, please. So you can read these quotes and see that, interestingly, this is precisely what the city and state claim they are trying to do with their affirmatively furthering fair housing initiatives. So even when Trump was dismantling AFFH, many municipalities vowed to uphold the mandate anyway. And both New York State and New York City launched major initiatives to do so. So New York State's effort is called Fair Housing Matters New York. And what they aim to do is address the root causes of segregation. And you can see from these quotes that they understand that segregation causes inequities beyond living situation in access to all kinds of other things, employment, education, quality health care, and all kinds of things. Next slide, please. So here's the city's plan. This is the Where We Live New York plan. And remember, Dick mentioned that this 2 to 11 policy is something, it's not a state level thing, it's a city thing. So, so you can see from their quote that they get that the lack of affordable housing disproportionately affects people of color, people with disabilities, and other protected classes. But the problem is that this 2 to 11 policy, which HPD has not only enabled, but continually encourages it, and this is even in cooperatives, which are not under threat of privatization. The initial rationale for the 2 to 11 program was it was supposed to be a compromise. So you wouldn't think they would offer it to places that have already prevented privatization, but that's exactly what they do. And this flies in the face of everything the city claims it is trying to do in its affirmatively furthering fair housing initiative, because these conversions will have a discriminatory effect on protected classes, and especially as we've seen from the data presented on non-white New Yorkers, very few of whom will be able to afford the converted apartments. So these conversions will limit the choices of people of color and their access to quality living conditions in neighborhoods with good schools and other critical resources. We might also remember that the original Mitchell-Lama law did not have a buyout provision. It was a Rockefeller amendment which enabled privatization. And this modification of the statute also has a disparate impact on people of color and other protected classes. And this is precisely why Mitchell-Lama United would like to pass this legislation to restore the law to its original 1955 form. So if the city and state truly wish to counter systemic racism and segregation, next slide, please, Warren, they need look no further than the Mitchell-Lama housing program. So this is where we come to how the Mitchell-Lama model of not-for-profit housing, where housing is seen as a human need rather than a speculative investment, works in perpetuity because no one makes a profit. So the price does not continue to escalate and the cost to new families stays truly affordable. Mitchell-Lama housing is diverse. Mitchell-Lama housing is affordable. Mitchell-Lama housing is accessible to disabled people. Mitchell-Lama housing co-ops contribute to housing stability and neighborhood stability. Mitchell-Lama housing is accessed via government waiting list, which under normal operation preclude those discriminatory practices that are rampant in market and other housing models. Mitchell-Lama housing cooperators are owners and they have autonomy over their living conditions. And Mitchell-Lama housing developments are often naturally occurring retirement communities, NORCs, where seniors can age in place. So Mitchell-Lama at its best has been this integrated housing that New York City and state insists that they want. The Mitchell-Lama program has worked towards erasing the barriers of separation. When you bring people together in these Mitchell-Lama communities, all of a sudden, they can see that they are very much the same when it comes to their wishes and needs for housing, schools, childcare, other resources, and just their general well-being. So as we have seen, the city and state are on record with saying that they will take affirmative steps to desegregate. But to actually affirmatively desegregate, they need to invest in the kinds of programs that embody the city they say they wish to create. So the vigorous defense of the Mitchell-Lama program would contribute significantly towards the eradication of the devastating inequities that accompany New York City's longstanding patterns of segregated housing. If the city and state took substantial action to protect and preserve Mitchell-Lamas, both from privatization and 2 to 11 conversions through legislative, regulatory, and political means, and if they invested in the capital needs of these existing aging buildings, then this would be a very good start. The other thing to mention here is that Mitchell-Lama 2.0 is certainly an idea whose time has come. And this also fulfills the mandate of AFFH. So now in this period of substantial change that we're all experiencing, this is actually the right time for creativity and action in reimagining all the systems that are oppressive. And some options for making Mitchell-Lama 2.0 work could be through converting failed luxury buildings into Mitchell-Lama co-ops, or by acquiring office buildings that have been emptied out through the shift to remote work and turning those into Mitchell-Lama co-ops. And yet another option is to give Mitchell-Lama rental tenants the option to convert their developments to Mitchell-Lama co-ops when their landlords want to privatize. Another option is to utilize land trusts. So having a robust initiative to build new Mitchell-Lamas through any number of mechanisms would be a really transformative step towards fair housing in New York City, and show that the city actually intends to invest in dismantling structural racism. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And so now just quickly at this point talk about ways in which the Borough Board can help support Mitchell-Lama United's efforts. We would appreciate either in the form of a letter of support or resolution. And actually we had a resolution from the Brooklyn Borough Board, which was overwhelmingly voted in favor of support. We would be happy to schedule a follow-up meeting to work on this. So if we were to go the resolution route, it would comprise the following main points. The Borough Board would support legislation pending in Albany to limit the maximum extent possible the privatization of Mitchell-Lama developments. Second, support the suspension of all privatization processes until the COVID-19 pandemic is over. And third, prioritize the development of new Mitchell-Lama developments to the greatest extent possible. And with a total of over 32,000 Mitchell-Lama co-ops and rental units in the Bronx, your support would benefit a significant number of your neighbors and constituents. And we would also like to make individual presentations at your respective community boards for more in-depth information if you like. And also you're invited to join Mitchell-Lama United or any of its affiliated organizations. And finally, we'd like to like to be your resource of support, and you may reach out to us by email, mitchellamaunited@gmail.com, if any of the Mitchell-Lama developments in your community boards are facing privatization or experiencing any kinds of malfeasance in either co-ops or rentals. And that concludes our presentation. Thank you for your attention, and you can take any questions if you like.
Warren?
All right. Just as a reminder, if everyone could use their, sorry, my dog distracted me there. If everyone could use the raise hand function, and I do see that there is one hand raised already, George Torres. George, you can go ahead.
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for this. It was very informative. I happen to live in a Mitchell-Lama. I live in Co-op City. And the one thing your presentation didn't speak to, or maybe I missed it, is actually how privatization actually enhances or gives an opportunity to people who live in Mitchell-Lamas currently. You know, for lack of a better terminology and being straightforward, this is our opportunity to cash out if we were able to privatize. You're taking that ability away from pastures. My second and third question is, you speak about the state laws about fair housing. I would imagine that New York City is subject to it. I'm just curious, you know, we're building a lot of affordable, quote unquote, affordable housing in Black and brown communities, especially here in Community Board 12. How is the AMI and all the points that you made any different for affordable housing in this district than it is for Mitchell-Lamas? The same claims you make about unaffordability if they privatize are all the same for private rentals, whether they're Mitchell-Lama or not. Especially in terms of, you know, you showed the incomes of some of the people on this. I'm just very confused because, again, they can live these, quote, the AMIs of 20% or 160%. That's actually what we're arguing for right now. We're arguing for the higher end of AMI so that for our people, for our professionals living in the district to come and move to the district. You're actually advocating the opposite, where we put even more lower AMI so that it's more affordable. So again, that's a contrast to what even our borough president has advocated for for the last 4 state of the boroughs, he's advocated for higher AMI. So can you reconcile all of that in your answers to all 3 questions?
Warren, who would you like to take this? You're muted, Warren.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I see Lee Chong was raised her hand. Would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'd like to take a crack also oh, by the way, I should introduce myself. I'm Lee Chong. I'm a member of the Cooperators United for Mitchell-Lama. I'm actually a Mitchell-Lama advocate, and I started way back in the Manhattan Borough President's office under C. Virginia Fields. I was the chair of her Mitchell-Lama task force. I actually, after I left, I joined the Bronx Mitchell-Lama task force, which I don't believe exists anymore. And I think James Rouse is on this call, and he used to be co-chair of this meeting. But in any case, I just want to let you know that currently, I did a quick arithmetic, over 30,000 Mitchell-Lamas in the borough of the Bronx. If I take away Co-op City, which has a little over 15,000, there are a total of 15,000 Mitchell-Lama rentals and co-ops. To address George's concern about the privatization and the opportunity to make money, this is not what Mitchell-Lama was created to do. It was created to make housing affordable. And I understand when people privatize, they want to leave. But 100% of the residents do not want to leave. What happens to those who want to remain? Those that don't have an opportunity to go anywhere, those that are going to be there and have their rents jacked up to a point that they can no longer afford to live there. And also they will lose their equity. So I think we need to have an understanding of what really happens when Mitchell-Lama's privatized. And that's where Mitchell-Lamas in the co-op, they have the residents, the cooperatives have the ability to sustain the affordability. Renters don't, because they're at the mercy of a landlord. And sadly, the majority of the Mitchell-Lamas that have left were post-74, so they don't go into rent stabilization. And they go market rate, and most of these people, God knows where they are now, or they're living for every month to pay their rent. If not, then they get kicked out. To address the issue of AMI, some community boards, probably not 12, I guess, want to make sure the AMIs fit the community so that they have more affordable housing, because the AMI, the federal, is actually higher than a lot of the community boards. I think Community Board 3 in the Bronx, I used to be a public member of Community Board 3 in the Bronx, does not have that one, and they would like to do it. And when I was in Manhattan working with community boards, they wanted to make it based on census tract on where the development was going to be. And that's something that a lot of elected officials and candidates running for office are talking about. I hope I answered part of your question, George.
Yeah, you did. I do have a follow-up with regards to the response. Co-op City explored this conversation maybe 5 or 6 years ago when we were looking at refinancing our mortgage. It never went through. You spoke before about the transfer tax, which is where the co-op or the management company would make their money. Co-op City's plan, or at least the way I remember it, was that they would you would charge the tax on those people that actually did cash out. Those who wanted the opportunity to remain obviously stayed, didn't have to sell. My concern is, I know you're speaking about, you make the racial argument of Black and brown people, but I've always found that when we start having those conversations, it seems like, we're taking away something from the Black and brown community. For example, term limits only started to happen when we started electing more Black and brown people, so they don't get to stay in power that long. It's the same thing here. We finally have Mitchell-Lamas that are recognizing, or people of color are finally moving into these because the waiting list, as you know, even for Co-op City, which has 15,000 apartments, is still 3, 4, 5 years long. So, you know, any Mitchell-Lama in Manhattan, also multiple years. So the idea that we're taking away the ability for these people, you know, I hate to put it as plainly as cashing out, but it's still their right. They suffered for multiple years, 20, 30 years. There is no equity. Oh, that was the other question. There is no equity for us. When I move out of Co-op City, whatever I get back is what I put into it. It's not I get to sell at a higher rate because I had equity on my co-op. I don't know if that's true of every single Mitchell-Lama, but in Co-op City, if you paid $35,000 to the mortgage to get in, that's all you're getting back. You're not getting $35,000 plus another 15 because you've been there for 32 years. So, you know, I don't know how you reconcile that. That's not anything. And I've invested this pandemic alone, we've invested money, you know, new refrigerators, new everything. We're never going to get that back other than we get to take that with us. But all the other improvements that we did to the apartment, we don't get back. So, you know, again, there's no way to reconcile that. And I feel like as a Hispanic, I'm missing out by not getting, you know, maybe what my apartment is worth. Because you're right, my apartment might go up. I mean, I've seen Parkchester, which is probably the next comparable thing in the Bronx, but it's not a Mitchell-Lama. Their 3 bedrooms are going for $275,000. So I think, you know, we should be able to cash out on these things. That's all for now.
Warren, may Valerie wants to get in on this, but I would like to, I'd like to address, George, your issue directly, which is to say honestly, yes. Mitchell-Lama is a not-for-profit operation. You get back what you paid in and you can't cash out. And to put it plainly, what we are advocating is to keep it that way, because that protects all the people on the waiting list. You cannot cash out without hurting somebody else. All those people on that 3 to 5 year waiting list, soon as for Co-op City to go private, they can forget it. And the other point that I was trying to make with the Southbridge story is that the people who got out, who actually sold and left, they indeed did leave with a lot more money in their pocket wherever they went, you know, to Pennsylvania or Florida. They certainly didn't, you know, probably couldn't afford to buy another place in Lower Manhattan, but they left with hundreds of thousands of dollars that was created not by their suffering. They didn't suffer living across the street from the South Street Seaport in Lower Manhattan. They were the benefit of 25, 30 years of low taxes and subsidized loans. And everybody else is screwed. Everybody on the Southbridge waiting list is priced out. And now everybody who didn't leave is getting hit with incredible increases. My point, George, is that currently in Mitchell-Lama, it's a win-win. It's a win for the people who are living there now because they are living better and less expensively than they could live anywhere else. And it's a win for every citizen of New York who has the right to get on the waiting list and get the exact same benefit for themselves. What we like to say in our presentations is there is a tremendous economic benefit. There is a tremendous economic benefit that accrues to every Mitchell-Lama shareholder while they live there. Your monthly housing cost is low, therefore your disposable income and your opportunities to save, you could invest in mutual funds, is huge. And so there is a tremendous economic benefit while you live in a Mitchell-Lama, but there is no economic benefit when you leave. In the private sector, it's just the opposite. Once you go private, you get a tremendous economic benefit when you leave, but it's not so good for the people who are still living there. And that's our point. And I think Valerie's shaking her head, but I know, Valerie, you wanted to say
Yeah,
something.
go ahead,
So
Valerie.
I would defer to you at this point.
Oh, I think you might be muted.
Break. You got an 80% tax abatement. Had you been paying that all the time that you were living there, you would not be in the same position you would be in now. And for the politicians, as Dick said, that are concerned with this, they're going to leave the state. Our records show that 90% of them leave the state, take the money with them, money that they've made for the tax abatement on the public. This is a public matter too. And then we also have to consider our young people who can't afford to live in this state anymore. Mitchell-Lama is one of the ways, and probably the only way at this point, that they are going to get an opportunity to have their own place, because that's what I did when I moved out. That's what all of us did when we moved out. You went to college, you got your job, you wanted to be able to have your own place in your own life. And that is not possible right now with the state of New York and the economy we have now. So now, it's a matter, you want to cash out, then you go ahead and cash out, but you're going to leave everybody holding the bag. And that's not fair. You benefited all this time from the tax rate, from the public trust and the public support and the public subsidy. And you have to consider that. Yeah, you put some things in your apartment. Everybody put some things in their apartment because you wanted that lifestyle. You created the lifestyle you wanted. Okay, you didn't do it for me, you did it for you. And now we're saying, leave it for somebody else and leave it for the next generation, because I think that's one thing that wasn't mentioned in the presentation that I personally feel is very important. Because when I came out of school, that's what I did. A year and a half after getting my job, I moved into a Mitchell-Lama. That was what I could afford, and it's been my only apartment since I've been here. So I think we need to be fair and we need to be considerate of others as well. You had a benefit, leave the benefit for somebody else, and realize that you may live better in another state, but there's no place like New York. Everybody who I know has moved out has said the very same thing. Thank you.
Are there any additional comments or questions? I know I saw a few things in the chat, but is there anything?
Yeah, I see
Any
James
hands up?
Rouse. James Rouse from our office had his hand raised. And oh, yeah, there we go. James, if you're ready.
Hi, Lee. Good to see you. Yes, we were very active many years ago for the Bronx. And a lot of this, just based on that experience and otherwise, a lot of what's being proposed looks good. My main question is regarding just one point regarding the elimination of proxy votes. I just want to get an understanding of what's the goal with that. I mean, that's a big thing to ask. As a person, I live in a large co-op. It's not Mitchell-Lama, and we probably would not get any business if there were not any proxy votes allowed. So I just want to try to get the rationale behind that, because if this is it meant to kind of prevent a vote from happening towards privatization, or for some other reason? I just didn't really understand that point. Thanks.
Any of the presenters available to answer James there? Oh, Deputy, I think you're muted. Oh.
All right, trying again. Can
There
anybody
we-
hear me?
Yes, yes. I can
Very
hear
good.
you.
All right. So, the advantages of proxy voting can be handled by absentee ballots. The disadvantage of proxy voting is when you assign your proxy to another person for you at an annual meeting. The idea of proxy vote was created by the state corporation law with multinational corporations involved. Not everybody shows up at the stockholders meeting, but to get a quorum, they allow proxies, which are usually given to Mint. Done at if you vote on site, your building, we have 3 buildings in a row of townhouses, and we vote in the community room. So nobody needs to mail in a proxy vote because we all live here. The problem is if you're not present on the day of the vote, that's a problem. So we allow absentee ballots. So anytime over a 2-week period, you can drop an absentee ballot off in the management office. And as a result, we always get quorums, and we have free and fair votes. In certain buildings, what happens is a group of insiders, sometimes even the president of the co-op, goes around and collects proxy votes. And they always win because people are intimidated and they are afraid not to give their vote to the president. And so what you have here is you may have 500 people in a co-op, and when the election happens, there's 400 people voting, 300 of which are proxies collected by the president. And that is the misuse of proxies that we are trying to eliminate by our pending legislation. I hope that's clear.
All right, thank you. And I think we all just got bogged down by WebEx there collectively for a minute, but thank you everyone for your patience. We do have one more question from Ken at CB5. So Ken, go ahead and unmute yourself and hopefully it'll be smooth. Ken, are you there? Can you hear me? Yeah, Ken, unfortunately, we can't hear you. I don't think it's anything on your end.
Hold on a moment, Ken. Can you just try to mute and unmute yourself?
All right,
Is it-
so.
Oh, the question is in the chat now, Chris.
Okay. Okay, yes. But Ken's question in the chat says, what are the consequences of nonprofit ownership and land trusts?
Thank you. Sorry for the...
Warren, you disappeared from the screen. What happened? Okay, you're muted and there's no camera. Okay. I was just checking in with our chairperson and coordinator, Warren Harding. Make sure you didn't want to handle the question, but can you repeat the question and we'll see who wants to take it?
Sure. Ken from CV5 had just asked, what are the consequences of nonprofit ownership and land trusts?
nonprofit ownership is what we are describing as there are a lot of ways to have nonprofit ownership. Mitchell-Lama co-ops are one form. There are also not-for-profit organizations, community development corporations that run rental housing, often on a not-for-profit basis, and these can be terrific options for renters because they are not-for-profit and they're owned by a not-for-profit organization that's committed to permanent affordability. In a land trust is another form of not-for-profit operation, or could be limited operation, because an organization owns the land and is committed to preserving affordable housing, and is the community land trust. And the building that's built on that land has a leasehold interest, essentially leasing the land from the not-for-profit. And that what is built on a community land trust could be a not-for-profit rental, could be a limited equity co-op, could be a not-for-profit co-op. But there will always be some form, there will always be a relationship between the entity that owns the building and the entity that owns the land that will be designed to preserve affordability. That's the best short answer I can give you. There are books written on this subject, long ones.
All right, so I think that does it for the questions. Can you put your hand back up? I don't know if WebEx is going to cooperate. Yep. Okay. I think we're good on that front. So, Deputy, I don't see any other questions at this time. Hopefully, WebEx will cooperate in terms of audio.
I hope so. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, good. Well, I just want to thank all of our representatives on behalf of Mitchell-Lamas for this robust conversation. I think it's obviously one that's needed, and I thank you for coming today. I want to move on to the next item on our agenda.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. We've lost our lead. On behalf of Warren and others, thank you for your time and so long.
Thank you. Seeing you all.
And thank you for your advocacy. So our next item is the adoption of the Bronx Budget Priority Report, and in response to the mayor's preliminary capital and service budget for fiscal year 2022. And we're going to have a presentation from our Director of Capital Projects, Betty McCrae. Everyone should note that this was sent to you in advance of this meeting for your thorough reading enjoyment. And I hope that everyone has come prepared, and I will turn it over to Betty. Do you have any anything to add?
Hi, good morning. There's not really a presentation. Since the report was sent over last week, Friday, asked that the board members review it and give any comments to it prior to today's date, which I didn't receive any as of yet. So I don't know if you have anything to say as of now, so that way I'll be able to take notes and make any changes or amendments that you would like to our fiscal year 22 capital budget priorities report.
Yes, thank you, Betty. So we, as I said, we send these out for your comments to get them in advance. But before I open the floor up, I will, of course, want to thank Betty and the rest of her staff and the rest of the Borough President's office staff that participated in putting this document presentation together. I want to thank you for that effort. And then I'll open it up to the rest of the board if there are any comments at this time. And, I guess I should say the regular virtual format is, raise your hand in the chat section and star 9 on the phones. So, Chris, do we have any hands?
Not yet.
I think that means that everybody read it, and that means that everyone just believes in it so much that we could just proceed to the voting. I think that's what that means. So pursuant to Section 241 of the City Charter, a draft report of the budget priorities for fiscal year 2022 was submitted for review to all borough board members. The report serves as a response to the mayor's preliminary financial plan that was released on January 15th, 2021, and the borough board public hearing that was held on January 28th, 2021. And I've already asked if there are any edits or comments, but I'll just throw that back out there again and say, Chris, have any hands come up since I started speaking?
Nope, still none.
All right. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion to adopt the budget priorities report. No amendments have been made at this time. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Madam Deputy.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. And may I have a second?
I second. Emmanuel Martinez, CB7.
Thank you so much. And I will call for the vote. I just have a question, Marisol. Do I have to do the roll vote, or is voice vote enough?
Marisol, you are muted.
I'm sorry, I'm talking to myself. So I said we have quorum and we did go over the attendance. I just want to note that Simone Jones is here for Councilman Riley's office. So we do have quorum. So it can go either way. We can either ask for anyone to.
You know what? That you made a good point. We did have an arrival after the roll was called. So why don't we go ahead and do a roll call vote, just so that we make sure we log everyone in who may have arrived after the original roll call. So let's start with, and we're doing chairs and council member representatives. So we're doing a community board, and of course representatives of chairs as well. Community board 1. We're doing, this is a vote. This would be a yay or nay. This feels like the Senate floor, right? It feels like we're on the Senate floor and we need to clarify the vote. Do we? So community board 1, not community board 2. Yay. I thought I heard information.
She said yay.
Okay. Community board 3. Community board 4. So can everyone just mute yourselves if you're not speaking, because I'm getting a lot of background, but I'm not hearing the person who's voting. And I'm up to community board 4. Okay, community board 5.
Yay. Dr. Ball.
Yes.
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Community Board 6.
Yes.
Thank you. Community Board 7.
Board 7 votes yes.
Thank you. Community Board 8.
So I'm so sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. Community Board 9. Okay. Community Board 10.
Yes.
Community Board 11.
My chairman's not present, to my knowledge.
Okay. Community Board 12.
Community Board 12 votes yes, Madam Deputy.
Okay. Thank you. And Council Member Ayala.
I'm so confused.
Can you repeat?
I was told, you can hear me now?
Just barely, but you just need a
it
yes
says,
or no, a yay or a nay.
instead of saying, I don't know, I guess.
You said abstain?
Yes.
Okay, abstain.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I mean, no explanation is necessary unless you'd like to say.
No, I can't at this time. That
Okay.
was my directive.
Completely understand. Councilmember Riley's office.
Good morning, Madam Deputy. The council member abstains.
Thank you. Councilmember Mark Jonai. Councilmember Cabrera's office.
Councilmember Cabrera's office, yes.
Councilmember Gibson's office.
Councilmember Gibson's office, yes.
Councilmember Salamanca's office.
Councilmember Salamanca's office votes yes.
And lastly, Councilmember Diaz Sr. Thank you. Okay, I think that's a passing vote, correct, Marisol? I wasn't doing the math, but.
No, it carries.
Yeah,
12
okay.
to 2.
Motion carries. Okay. So, our next. I think I'm having a bit of difficulty all day today with my computer. Our next presenter is, can somebody help me out, Chris?
Yes, the
Marisol,
Mayor's Office
anybody?
of, Mayor's Office of Nightlife.
The Mayor's
Sorry.
Office of Media and Entertainment.
Hello, thank you.
Thank you, Marisol. Got those mixed up.
Yes, this is Josh Levin for the Mayor's Office of Media and Entertainment. We do actually house the Office of Nightlife, and
we knew that. We knew that.
we cover a lot of ground in our small and mighty office. Once again, my name's Josh Levin. I'm the Associate Commissioner of Intergovernmental and Community Affairs. Thank you, Bronx Borough Service Cabinet meeting members, for allowing me to present. I'll be brief since I know we're coming up to the last half hour of this meeting. I just wanted to give a quick update, first and foremost, about our office, since we cover a lot. We house the Mayor's Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting, which many of you might know because we send out flash notifications when film production is occurring in your community or council district. And so that's where we probably act the most. We also have the programs team that covers our industry partnerships for economic development, which includes music, theater, broadcast media, digital media, publishing, advertising. So a lot there. And we've done stuff like the off-Broadways in the boroughs. We've done other pop-up performances, partnerships, and we do a lot of workforce training and development. We also have the NYC Media, which is the 5 television stations and 1 radio station that we oversee, along with providing support for hearings with the city council and press events for the mayor. And then the Office of Nightlife, which deals with the hospitality industry. So covering all that there, I just want to drill down with like film production, since like I said, that's where we mostly engage with the community boards and council districts. Hopefully you're all receiving our flash notifications, and I will follow up with the Bronx BP's office to make sure that we have the correct contact information. Since phase 2, back in June, production has been allowed to return to city streets, but back then it was a very limited cap. In part to the governor, putting a cap on 10 people or less for pre and post production with some principal photography. That cap was raised to 25 people in phase 3. And then phase 4, the cap was removed, but the mayor's office felt that we should still have a cap, so we don't have the 150, 300 person type productions that were the norm pre-COVID. So it was 50 people during the month of August, and since September 1st, it's been 100 people. We are constantly examining whether that cap should hold, and we're going to make determinations about that. But we're also taking efforts like limiting parking being held on one side of the street. So September 1st, you'll probably see that like instead of both sides, it's one side, so we can allow people in the community to walk along the street. If there is a production, they can cross the street and just limit interactions with people on set. We're also, per state law, requiring a affirmation plan of their COVID compliance. A lot of these studios do have more stringent guidelines. They're supposed to produce their COVID compliance that they submitted to the state if asked. And we're just asking, in addition, folks be very mindful of that they're guests in the neighborhood and need to be good neighbors. So we're asking them to put signage up a week in advance. Typically, it's been 48 hours has been the minimum, sometimes as little as 24 hours. But with alternate sites rules altered, we just want to make sure that people are getting as much advance notice. And because of that, you as the community districts and council member district offices might not be receiving the flash notifications until they have the permits have been approved. So sometimes the productions might be reaching out, like I said, a week or more in advance. Because we're all working remotely, those permits are processing a little later. So you might receive an email, but from the production, but haven't received the flash notification that makes it official. So we apologize for that inconvenience, but like I said, we're trying to give people as much time to plan. We're also mandated that craft services cannot be served on the street. So we're encouraging productions to rent out spaces, whether it's churches, restaurants, or catering halls where the limit is 50% or less, since it's considered holding. And especially with restaurants and catering halls, those can also serve as their craft services instead of like a food truck. But they shouldn't be setting up tables. Same with like temperature checks and COVID testing. They shouldn't be setting the COVID certainly shouldn't be on city streets. Temperature checks, they might have somebody taking temperatures, but they should have proper signage, so people aren't getting in a queue that isn't meant for them. I just wanted to make sure that we all are familiar with one another. If you do have any questions or concerns, I will make sure that the board has. I'll put my contact information here. My colleague Steph Campagna-Wheaton had to jump off the call, but she is also a good resource if there's any complaints. I guess I went through things pretty quickly. Be mindful of everybody's time. If you have questions about production and where we're at these days, please feel free to ask away. But I appreciate your time.
Hello. Oh yeah, Greg Faulkner, go ahead.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I'm just curious. I know a couple of years ago, you guys created the production assistant training program to, your office runs that program, am I correct?
Correct.
So I understand that program was designed to bring more minority folks into the production industry. Could you just update us on where that program is? And also, could we receive some regular updates on how you're doing in terms of your outreach, in terms of your production training program to get basically folks into the industry? It's a very difficult industry to get into. And
Yes.
I know that the city gives a lot of tax incentives to a lot of these movie productions that come in and do work in the city. The city gives a whole lot of tax benefits. One of the trade-offs I understand was that they would begin recruiting folks to work in the industry. And I just want to know how successful we've been in doing that.
Certainly. First, just a clarification. The city does not run the tax incentive program. We did formerly have a small.
But the industry gets a tax break. That's
Yes,
what I'm
it
saying.
does. It gets it from the state. We partner with. Yes, it's a 30%.
Yeah, they get a government tax incentive. In other words.
100% correct there. Formed recently, 25% below the line, which is meant for the term for your more blue collar union positions. So gaffer, electrician, truck captain, parking captain. So yes, they receive that from the state, and it's $1 million minimum for production. And that was just
in return for outreach into the minority community to attract people into the industry. So I want to know, have we been successful? Are there limits? How can we help if you need assistance in terms of recruiting? It'd be good to get an update on that information, as well as the productions that you're doing in the community, particularly in certain neighborhoods.
So all our workforce training has gone online since the pandemic. So thankfully, we've still been able to train folks. You're referring to the Made in New York Production Assistant Program, which is our longest running program that Brooklyn Workforce Innovations runs remotely now. Typically, it used to be out of the Brooklyn Navy Yard Building 92 for on location. So this actually allows someone like in the Bronx to not have to travel, over an hour to learn about this service. So it's 8-week quarterly, very robust course. And it's requires that basically we're targeting low-income communities or communities where there has been chronic unemployment or underemployment. We're approaching 1,000 participants that have been graduated, and our most recent class that graduated, a third of them have already been working right off the bat. I will have to get you more statistics there if you'd like, but like I said, we're approaching 1,000. I believe it started about 2004. So we are usually between 5 and 15 or 5 and 20 students per cohort, 8-week cohort. The reason being is we don't want the number of graduates to outpace the available positions. But the good thing is that it involves a 2-year commitment, and in the case of the most recent graduating class, folks are starting work right away. We also have the Made in New York post-production program, which is a little bit newer. It's only a few years old, and that's been a great job too, because a lot of post-production work can be done remotely. Similarly, it's all remote. We have our animation project. We have our media makers program. The animation project is for students with neon centers, and it's more for I think high school students. The media makers gives folks of interest in the media entertainment industry a broad overview of the different jobs and opportunities. The Roundabout Theater also has a training program. The state even has some programs set up at the Bronx Community College, I believe, with Local 52, one of the unions. So we're doing our, we're not resting on our laurels just because we have had the production assistant program. We're really trying to push the envelope, whether it's ourselves or our industry partners like Local 52. So I can share with the folks at the Bronx Borough President's Office that.
Yeah, can you update us on the success of the program on a maybe quarterly basis? Let us know where you're recruiting, the numbers, just so that we know that we are living up to that responsibility.
Yes, I can get the Made in New York post-production program numbers sent out. And in the past, the Mayor's Office of Media Entertainment, we hadn't been regular attendees of the Borough Service Cabinet meetings. So we're going to make this an at the very least an annual affair, so that we will come here and talk about the whole entire portfolio as well as particulars. But I'm happy to share the production assistant numbers on a quarterly basis.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Don't see any other questions at the moment. So, Deputy.
Okay, that's great. So if we of course want to thank you, Mr. Levine, for that presentation. As always, thank you for coming out and talking to us. And we'll move ahead with the program, which is basically our announcements period, where we invite everyone, all first board members, if you have anything that you would like to make sure that is happening in your office and that you want everyone to know about, please let us know now. Raise your hands and we'll give you time to speak. If there are other folks from departments and agencies that want to do the same, please raise your hands virtually. We will acknowledge you, *9. If you need to raise your hand, and because you're on the phone, and we will acknowledge you as well. So I'll give everybody a minute to sort of figure out if you have an announcement to make, and then I'll say, Chris, any hands?
All right, sure. We've got a few. Suri Miranda, saw your hand first. Go ahead.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rosalie Miranda. I'm the Bronx Borough Director with the Mayor's Office. I was also assigned to the Vaccine Command Center, so I want to first apologize to those district managers who I have not been able to attend their community boards meetings or district cabinet meetings. I do want to make sure that folks are abreast in terms of everything happening with the Vaccine Command Center. So what I'll do is I'll drop oh my god, a link for people to sign up for a newsletter that we're sending, making sure that people are receiving the latest information. I am going to also share my contact information again for anyone who has questions about the vaccine, so you have a point of contact that you can reach out to in case you have any questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next hand I saw Shanna Knotts.
Hey, good morning. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Good morning, everyone. This is Shanna Knotts, Deputy Chief of Staff from Councilmember Salamanca's office. I just wanted to mention 2 upcoming events that we will be hosting in our office. The first is tomorrow, a free rapid COVID testing via mobile unit. This will be from 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. at our district office, 1070 Southern Boulevard. All is welcome. No appointments needed. Test results will be available 15 minutes after. The second event will be next Monday. We will be doing a pet food giveaway in partnership with New York Common Pantry. So your pets are welcome to come and get some free food for cats and dogs. This will be starting at 10 a.m. and will be available while supplies last. So please feel free to come out. Thank you all.
All right, thank you. I see Michael Sharp from Finance. Your hand was up next. Go ahead. Michael, if you're there, just remember to unmute.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I got lost in another screen here. But good morning to everyone. I just want to remind folks that we are in a very important season for homeowners. This is the Notice of Property Value season. And maybe you've received this document that tells what the Department of Finance has on record for you regarding your property, if you own a home, a co-op, or a condo. And this is the time to take action if you want to challenge maybe your assessed value, your market value, or apply for an exemption, which the upcoming deadline for exemptions is March 15th. Today at 4 p.m., we are having a notice of property value information session. You can join by going to our website and looking up the virtual events tab and find out exactly how to do all of those things, apply for exemptions, challenge your market values, and etc. And once again, we want to make the offer to both the elected officials and our community board staff and leaders here that the Department of Finance is available to do virtual information sessions for your constituents and your districts that update them not only on property information, but rent freeze as well. And I will put my contact information in the chat. Thank you all and have a great day.
All right, thank you. Next, I see Abigail from Emergency Management.
Hello, everyone. Abigail from Emergency Management. A few up. So New York City Emergency Management just released a PSA for Partners in Preparedness, which is a program for businesses and organizations to have an access to a network of information and resources to continue their operations prior, during, and after disaster. And I will include my email in the chat in case anyone wants any links or anything offline. A reminder that we also still have our free virtual community emergency response team training online. We are looking up for a little boost in Bronx community boards 2, 6, 7, and 9. So if anyone's interested in those boards, please reach out. And as of looking forward to March and daylight savings, just a reminder to make sure you're checking your go bags and your emergency plans and making any updates that are necessary. Those are my updates. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Deputy, I don't see any other hands raised at this time. Ken from CB5 did have his hand raised for a second there. I don't know if you had anything else to share.
Thank you. The notice. This week has been the JARC, the Jerome Avenue Revitalization Collaborative Launch Week. This was something that was birthed out of the Jerome Avenue rezoning 2 years ago. There were a series of activities that were done this week, and the final one is a Bronx Borough President's Candidate Forum, which will be hosted on BronxNet. That's available tonight at 6 o'clock if people want to sign in, and that is available through jarcbx@gmail.com, or of course, Community Boards 4 and 5 social media.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other hands?
Nope, I didn't see any additional hands.
Okay. Well, I think that's it. That allows us all to get on with the rest of our day. Yay! I thank you, as I did at the beginning, for coming every month and participating in your communities and participating in this board. I thank you for your vigilance throughout the pandemic and everything that we've had to go through to make sure that we meet and do the business of the borough. And I look forward to seeing you next month. Thank you and have a great day.